Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame with your hosts, Pierre Camus and Chris Moncano.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Endgame. I'm Pierre. With me is Chris, and we're here to talk wide receivers for what's sure to be another crazy week 4. Chris, it's crazy already. We got a game canceled. It's official now, and I know you did some reaction on that, so obviously go check out that video for some of the details. But are you surprised? I mean, it went from maybe postponed to, we'll play on Tuesday or Monday, and now it's just, that's it. It's our first game. Are you worried now? Like legit worried about the rest of the season?
No, I'm not worried about the rest of the season. If you go watch that video, I'll put a link in the description. If you go watch that video, the NFL got pretty fortunate with this because the way it works with, and I talked about this in the video, but the way it works with the schedule with the Titans, Steelers, and the Ravens, it's going to work out quite well. It's just going to end up being like these teams had their bye week this week rather than when they were supposed to schedule it or supposed to have their bye week. So, again, I don't want to go into a ton of detail here because I talked about it in my other video. So it looks like the NFL kind of dodged a bullet here as best they can. And it sounds like the Vikings don't have any cases they were the Titans' opponents last week. So I think the NFL got off pretty fortunate here. But if this happens again down the road, and multiple teams are affected, I'm not really sure what they'll do. But for now, we look okay.
Well, for now, yeah. For now, so far, thankful it's just one game. They're talking about replaying it later in the season. We'll see how that happens. But, for now, obviously, you get those guys out of your lineup. So we're going to talk about some wide receivers that you might have to pivot to and plug and play that you might not have been expecting to play because obviously no Juju, no Deontay Johnson, right? So some of these kind of wide receiver 3, 4, maybe flex considerations. Let's see how strong their matchups look this week. Before we get into those details, you guys know what to do. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up. We're here to help you win every single week. Talk about every position, start sit advice, waiver wire advice, instant reaction, just like today, breaking down what's happening in the NFL. So don't forget to subscribe and like, and hit us up with some comments too if you have any specific questions. Now, you did mention the Vikings. Thankfully, they're still playing. One of the guys that you might want to plug and play into your lineup because talking about waivers, he was probably the top waiver claim for a lot of leagues, and that's Justin Jefferson. Kind of emerged in week 3, right, after a pretty quiet first couple of weeks, and all of a sudden, he blew the doors off, right? That 71-yard touchdown, that was only part of his production, right? It wasn't just one big play. He had 175 yards, and all of a sudden he's like top target in Minnesota. But is it that simple that, you spent fab on him, you got him, he looks like he's going to be, a main focal point there in the passing game. You just plug him in right away?
I don't know if yes and no. I could – the matchup, even though it looks great on paper, like Houston looks great, Bradley Roby is a great corner on the outside. I know he played a little bit in the slot last week, but they've been running him outside a lot. His big touchdown was from when he was lined up outside. So I think he's going to see a lot of Bradley Roby this week, which is not the best for him, especially a rookie in his, only making his 4th NFL start. So I think he's fine, but I view him more as like a low-end wide receiver 3 with upside. I definitely don't feel like he's like a must start this week. I certainly think he's going to be a guy that you're going to start more often than not. Just this week against Houston, even though on paper you think, oh, Houston, terrible defense. Bradley Roby is a good corner. He's done a great job against some top-notch wide receivers so far. So, and obviously you can't expect him to go, 7 catches, 175 yards, and a touchdown again. So wide receiver 3, but plenty of upside. So, that's it.
That's it. We know the upside. We saw it, right? Now, obviously, that might wind up being his biggest game of the season. He's not going to do that probably. He could do something similar again, but let's not expect that. But what's interesting is, the kind of conventional thinking coming out of college is that he would be more productive in the slot, right? Usually it's easier to, find targets that way. And, he's not necessarily a burner who's going to, be able to take the top off and, beat some of those top corners. But now that they moved him to the outside, that's where he was effective last week. It seems like he's done better that way. I guess more the defense was paying attention to Thielen. So anyways, that'll be interesting as the matchup, though. Like you said, right now, PFF, which you know, great source of data, but it's not always exactly what NFL teams have planned. Right now, they show Roby possibly shadowing Thielen. Don't know if that's going to happen. I don't really see that happening. But if so, Vernon Hargreaves on Justin Jefferson, yes, please. Okay, Hargreaves, I can tell you, is very toastable. So I would love to see that matchup. But I'd say I feel pretty good with Jefferson. But he's not necessarily a must start. But yeah, to me, if I got him, I'm putting him in, personally, wherever I can. All right, let's talk about another rookie who kind of emerged last week. That's Brandon Aiyuk in San Francisco. So good news, bad news. Good news is that he was the top target in San Fran with Nick Mullins and involved in the running game too. At 3 carries, including that touchdown, was a 19-yard end around. So he's definitely going to be a factor. Of course, Debo is still not close to returning. Bad news, George Kittle is returning. It looks like he's probably going to go in this game. So that obviously is going to hurt. And then let's talk about the matchup. Philadelphia, you'd think that was still a pretty good matchup, that he could be flexible, but I don't know. It might not be that simple either.
Yeah, this is another guy I don't feel great about this week. You look at the matchup on paper, you say, oh, Philadelphia, terrible secondary. But that's not the case. They brought in Darius Slay. Darius Slay, one of, if not the best, shutdown corners the NFL has right now. And he's going to be matched up on Aiyuk because no Debo Samuel, nobody else really of any relevance, right? He's probably going to shadow Brandon Aiyuk. Now, on the plus side, Brandon Aiyuk got 3 carries last week, so he still has some fantasy value if he's getting touches out of the backfield. And because Mostert and Coleman will be out, I'm sure he'll get more touches out of the backfield. I mean, I'm not saying more than 3, but he will get some touches out of the backfield again. But I can't view him more than like a deep league flex player, and I'm pretty low on him this week, and we'll talk about that more. So I really don't want Aiyuk in my lineups at all. I would prefer to have him on my bench.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. Obviously a good sign that, he's obviously getting more involved, but also was productive with his touches that he did get. But again, you got to look at the makeup of this team. Right now, yeah, they're still obviously hurting a running back. They don't have their main receiver. But Kittle is just going to take up a huge chunk of that target share. And like you said, not necessarily the cake matchup that you might think. I know, big play Slay, he's not quite the same as what he used to be, but he's still a pretty good corner. So I would temper expectations. Let's put it that way. So this next one, I have to just admit it, this makes me really sad. Because originally when we had done this, I said, this is a must start. Like if you have Alan Lazard, congratulations. And I mean, he was just ready to feast this week. It's Atlanta. All right. So you already know what I say there, right? Atlanta's secondary, it's pretty obvious it's terrible. But as long as Dan Quinn is the coach there, I'm going to stream and start anybody against that defense. But just found out, and this is almost breaking news. We just found this out. Lazard apparently has a core muscle injury. They're talking about surgery. A specialist is coming in. Now we're talking a serious injury. It went from he was fine. I mean, we didn't hear about this earlier in the week, and now all of a sudden, not just this game, but the immediate future is in doubt. I mean, do you know any more details about this?
No, I just know Adam Schefter tweeted out, noted core muscle specialist Dr. William Myers will look at Packers wide receiver Alan Lazard's scans for his core injury and determine if surgery is needed. So, yeah, not good. You got to think, even if surgery is not needed, he's probably not going to play this week if it's at this point. And this is a big blow, especially to my flex team, who pretty much has half my squad, I think, out with injury right now. I was really looking for Alan Lazard to help me this week, and that's not going to happen. But this is also a big blow for anybody who has Alan Lazard. Just came off a monster performance. But this is a great thing for everybody who has Valdez-Scantling, because you got to think now it's just going to be Adams, because Devontae Adams practicing looks healthy. We expect him to play, and Valdez-Scantling as now the Packers wide receiver too. So this is a big boost for Valdez-Scantling. Like you said, it's Atlanta. If you have MVS, you've had him on your bench because he had a nice game last week too. So if you picked him up this week, I think you could feel really, really good putting him in your lineup. Lots of upside here. Obviously, Alan Lazard. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's going to play, but a core muscle strain that's requiring a specialist to look to see if you need surgery, I got to think there's no chance he's playing this week. So you're going to have to look elsewhere. It's unfortunate, but That's 2020, right? This is what we're dealing with in 2020. You got to be ready at all times. Depth always matters in fantasy football, but this year especially, depth matters more than ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's sad when you have the guy who is the breakout, that sleeper that you hit on, and then when that's the guy who's out, it almost hurts more, when you have a guy like, let's say Julio's missing a game or Godwin's missing games. It's like, oh man, now I got to step up and who can I find? But when you hit I did it, this is my late round guy, I knew I had him tabbed, and he does break out, has this monster game, and then just like that, he's out. Like, to me, that's almost it's soul crushing actually to me, and I say that because I was a big Lazard stand this offseason. So we'll see. But yeah, you got to get him out of your lineup, obviously, this week. And I think you have to plug in MVS because honestly, I'm trying to think. Help me out here. You got Devontae Adams going to play probably, hopefully. Lazard, who's out. MVS. Who's the next wide receiver on the roster?
I honestly don't even know.
And I'm asking because I seriously don't know. I can't even think of it. I don't know. So, yeah. Okay. So I don't think they're going to, throw it to the tight end very much. I'm not going to plug in, those guys. So I think it's going to be an Aaron Jones game, but yeah, you have to start MVS. You know what? Valdez-Scantling right now, even besides Lazard being out, he's 12th in the league in air yards. I know he's a deep threat, right? That's what they do. They run him deep and they chuck it, and, he doesn't come down with all of them, but he's going to get a shot. And against this defense, you have to roll him out there. All right, let's talk about some other deep threats. Actually, going on to that same theme here, we have a couple of Chiefs receivers that you might think you'd want to fade, but I'm going to ask if you have interest in either Mecole Hardman or Sammy Watkins, because you think, okay, going up against the Patriots, no, because we know that's one of the best secondaries, right? Obviously, Gilmore's a shutdown corner, one of the best defenses around. But it might not be as bad of a matchup as you'd think.
Yeah, it's not. Gilmore obviously great, but the rest of the secondary is not that stellar. And yeah, I am rolling Sammy Watkins out in our flex league because I literally don't have any other choice. I have no other options. It's either him or guys like Latavius Murray or Golden Tate. I'd rather have the upside of Sammy Watkins, and same with Mecole Hardman. We know both these guys have tons of upside. We saw Sammy Watkins week 1 go off. Last week, Hardman had that long touchdown. That's what these guys can do. Sure, they can get you 3 points, 5 points, 0 points, but they also have that upside. So when you're looking for guys, as your final flex, and you're debating between somebody like, in my case, Sammy Watkins or Latavius Murray, who has no upside, right? Is going to give I'd rather just chase that upside and take the risk. So yeah, I think these guys are definitely startable as deep flex options with upside, but obviously not in shallower leagues, where I wouldn't be starting these guys, but in deeper leagues as flex upsides, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and again, it always has to do with roster makeup, right? You feel pretty good about the rest of your lineup. Maybe you want to play a little safer, get those few points. But if you want to, have a chance for a boom bust play that might pay off, yeah, that's Mecole Hardman. We kind of know what he is at this point. Last year against the Patriots, he did catch a 48-yard touchdown, but that's all he caught, right? And then the same thing, last week he'll catch a long touchdown, and that's it, right? He'll get 2 or 3 targets. So he could break a big one or he could do nothing. So, if you're willing to take the risk and maybe cash in on, a big play, you could do it. But, yeah, definitely more of the, I'd say, wide receiver 4 range, if anything. And then the other side of the coin here, we have another rookie receiver, CeeDee Lamb, you'd think would be kind of an every week play, and he's been solid. But we haven't seen that upside, right? We haven't seen the big game. We haven't seen him score a touchdown, right? Just like Amari Cooper. So he's had 5 catches, 6 catches, 5 catches. It's steady, but there's no boom, right? We see Dalton Schultz have a monster game. We had Cedric Wilson go off and score 2 touchdowns. We're not seeing that from Lamb, even though the Cowboys have this explosive pass game. So I'm wondering, is that good enough for you at this point, or do you kind of want to wait and see what happens because the Cowboys are getting everybody involved?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like this all season, outside of Amari Cooper, because you got Lamb, you got Gallup, you got Dalton Schultz has emerged now at tight end, and then you got Zeke, and of course you still have Cooper, but Cooper is clearly the number 1. So it's just a lot of mouths to feed, and as great as that Cowboys offense is, no offense is good enough to sustain 5 fantasy relevant players week in and week out. But at the same time, I don't think you can bench Lamb because it's not like he's been killing you, right? 5 catches for 50, 60 yards. That's not going to kill your week. And he's got, I mean, we haven't seen the upside, but that doesn't mean the upside isn't there, right? Especially in this offense. I mean, if he scores a touchdown in one of those games, you're feeling pretty good. So I think you still got to start Lamb. You just got to treat him more as like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Kind of like how we're treating Gallup right now. Obviously, Gallup has more upside because he catches a deeper ball, so he can always, like we saw last week, in one play, he can give you all the upside you need. Lamb can't necessarily, but I still think you got to treat him like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 every single week, and just understand that, hey, he's got a pretty decent floor. Maybe the upside is capped a little bit by all the mouths to feed, but he'll have some weeks.
Yeah, I agree. And it's tough to keep him on your bench. But it's also, I don't think it's to the point right now where I feel like I'm going to necessarily miss out on a huge game if I bench him, because there's, like you said, there's just too many. Even think about like the best offense that there is, right? Kansas City, we just talked about it. I mean, who do you realistically start every week and there's no way you're taking him out? You got Hill, you got Kelsey, you got, Edwards-Helaire. That's it, right? You can't start Watkins every week. You're not starting, Demarcus Robinson or, Mecole Hardman every week. You feel like it depends on the matchup. And the Cowboys are kind of that way. Obviously, you're starting Zeke every week. Cooper every week. Gallup, probably every week. But even so, he's going to have his days where he lets you down. And I don't know that Lamb is quite there yet. So, like you said, just, there's a limit to how many targets that each guy can get. And I also wonder how much they're going to need to throw it against Cleveland. That's my other issue. We might be a Zeke day. All right, let's get to our booms and busts. At the end of each episode, we like to tell you who are some guys that are a little farther under the radar or just they're just going to blow up, right? Might be a week winner for you. And then, of course, the other side, somebody who's just going to let you down. So, Chris, who do you have booming this week?
Well, you'll like this pick. I'm going out there to Miami. I got Devontae Parker against Seattle. I mean, Seattle giving up basically 380 yards to wide receivers per game. That's not like that's per game. 25 catches allowed per game to wide receivers. To put that in perspective, the second most, or whatever, the second worst, I guess, the Broncos, allowing 16 receptions. Okay, so they're allowing almost 10 more receptions per game than the second worst team. Like their secondary is abysmal. I think this is going to be a shootout. I think Fitzpatrick or Fitzmagic can keep the Dolphins the ball moving for the Dolphins, and Parker. All the stars are aligned for Parker to have a monster game.
I'll agree with that. I'm glad I let you go first because you basically just explained my pick. I'm sticking with the Dolphins too, but I'm going with Preston Williams because I think that everything you said, it's going to be a game where Fitzmagic is going to have to try to pull out some magic. I'm not saying it's going to work, but he's going to throw the ball a lot just because he's going to have to. Parker's a guy you're probably starting most weeks anyways. Williams hasn't done a whole lot. I know still kind of recovering from the ACL thing. He's been playing, but they've kind of limited his snaps, and he hasn't seen a ton of targets. But this is a game I think it's going to have to ramp up, right? Just because they're going to have to, and they're not deep at receiver, right? It's not like they can trot a bunch of other guys out there. So I think Williams is going to do well enough that you want to keep him in your lineup. So, and of course, it's all about Miami these days. All right, we got the Heat in the finals, right? Marlins made the playoffs. Why can't the Dolphins win, right? Why not? They're not going to. But all right, but you can play them in fantasy. All right, let's go to the other side here. Bust. Who's going to bust for you this week?
Yeah, we already talked about this guy, but it's Brandon Aiyuk for me. I know hot waiver pickup. People feeling good right now. They don't have any other receivers, but like you said, Kittle's back. That Eagles secondary, not what we're used to. Darius Slay's been a big addition. I think he's going to be on Aiyuk a lot. He's going to need to rush in a touchdown or find the end zone for you to feel good about starting him this week, and that's just not something you want to count on. So, yeah, I think you can bench Aiyuk this week.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I'm going to bench a guy that I unfortunately was kind of big. I thought last week was the week. Got my hopes up, the whole call to grandma. I thought it would pay off. It didn't. It didn't work. this matchup against the Bears is not going to help either. T.Y. Hilton, yeah, you're one game away from being dead to me the rest of the season. It's just, why is it not happening, right? Every receiver is hurt. Campbell's on IR. Pittman is hurt now. Doyle was out. There's no reason why the Hilton connection shouldn't be there, and it's just not there. So maybe the chemistry with Rivers, I don't know. Whatever the reason, if he couldn't capitalize last week, there's no way against this Bears secondary, and they're limiting wide receivers to, I believe, the fewest fantasy points per game. So yeah, I'm not starting Hilton. Sorry, fooled me once. All right, well, that does it for wide receiver. Starts it for week 4. Check out our other episodes. Of course, we cover quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends. No kicker still. But check out every one of our episodes. Hit that subscribe button and click on the notification bell so that we can help you win each and every week. Thanks for watching.